welcome. I just added a couple people. I do put this on YouTube just because some people prefer to want to watch it, but don't want to really join the meeting. Welcome. I just added a couple people. I do put this on YouTube. Yeah, I got to get rid of this here. Sorry, it's delayed a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to get started here, just right into it. And I'm going to try to keep this conversational, but it is rather dense. Okay. But anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to go over the chakras, and Jung is going to give us some psychological discussion of the chakras. He's going to take them and try to put them in a European context, and in his own give it. He really, I find that he's interpreting it like he would a dream. And he does this with myth too. And it's very instructive, I think. So anyway, we're going to start with the Muladhara, which is the root base. Now, you're going to be kind of surprised what he thinks about the root base here, because it's not what I ever thought it was. So what Jung's interpretation of the Muladhara, which means the root base, is that it is a symbol of our conscious, earthly, personal existence in time and space. Okay, and its sign is both the earth and an elephant. Let me see if I can get this up here. Let's see. Yeah, this is, what Jung is saying is the square represents the earth, and then the seven-trunked elephant is really is Ganesha. The Ganesh is supposedly resides in this realm, and it has to do with it's a carrier. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but the elephant is a carrier. But the square in the center is the earth. The elephant is the carrying power of the psychical energy of the libido. So it is really, we're being carried along by sort of an animal presence. Our psyche has yet to free itself from that. So the elephant is kind of a sign of the way we get around. It's not in at least psyche. We have not freed ourselves of the conscious earthly personal existence, which he's going to tell us pretty soon is a nursery. It's okay. It's the roots of our existence. That is our personal bodily existence on earth. And what is most important, and anybody who knows that a little bit about Kundalini knows that, is the serpent is asleep. She's coiled up there, So what Jung is saying, what's very important about Muladhara, is the gods are asleep. The impersonal realm is asleep. So the linga is a mere seed, and the Kundalini, this impersonal realm that is asleep there, is the sleeping beauty. And it's only the possibility of a world which has not yet come into being. So the only active power in Muladhara is man, and his awareness. The gods, and which is really impersonal, non-ego powers, are inefficient in Muladhara. They do practically nothing. And he says, now this was in 1932. He says it mirrors the situation in modern day European consciousness. And he says the fact that the chakra is located in the lower basin means it is something within our bodies, which he thought was rather remarkable, even though we seem to be such decapitated heads. We seem to be, the falcon that can't hear the falconer, turning and turning in the widening gyre. I mean, we're disconnected from our body, and that's our sickness. So this Muladhara consciousness is something in our bellies, it's in our abdomens, and it's expressed by the allegory of the abdomen. And he says to be in the abdomen means we are in the mother, we are in the womb, and we're in a condition of development or beginning. And so he says Muladhara existence is a sort of a womb. We in the Muladhara, which is the banal world of time and space, are mere beginnings, less than embryos, just seeds that have yet to become viable, like an unfertilized egg in a womb. This is, we're not even getting into the stuff that's mind blowing, which is in the later lectures, but it's already getting pretty amazing here. The conscious world is merely a nursery. It's an analogy that the analogy is that our actual personal existence is only transitory, and we are not meant to stay in this condition. We were planted on earth for another purpose that transcends our death. Now, this is the message of the chakras. Now, Jung is not saying this is his psychology, but I kind of think it is. But he's saying that we were planted on this earth for another purpose that transcends our death. Muladhara, personal bodily existence, is just transitory. It's a sprouting condition when things just begin. And he says what's interesting about Muladhara is it's this closed loop, and he says its consciousness is that the only definite thing in the world is man. And the only definite thing in this modern day mass cities realm, not the small hunter-gatherers, where we have these mega cities and everything, and mega countries and United Nations and everything else, is politics and economics are the only meaning in this Muladhara realm. Everything depends on the economy or politics. Muladhara is the only world. There's nothing beyond this. At least no experiences can prove it to us. This banal world is so definite. There is nothing. Everything else is illusion outside of this world. We here in Muladhara, we can only be concerned with immediate reality. The gods that stand for another order of things are asleep, and they're inefficient, and they mean nothing here. He's going to talk about the gods at least the sort of funny gods we have, which are not much to talk about in a second here. They are, yet he says that some experience in their dreams and visions seeds of something that points somewhere else, to a different kind of consciousness, which is currently inactive. Now, usually this happens in a great dream that we have that just has nothing to do with the ego realm of Muladhara. It seems to have a realm outside that. So the strengths of Muladhara, as everything is perfectly clear, everything is normal and banal, and yet there's this kind of lingering thing in the background that we're not the sleeping gods or seeds that show up in dreams. Now, they are potentially, you with some to get intuitions that they could allow us to look at the perfectly clear and banal world from a different point of view outside of it. And but right now we're just tangled in the roots. And he says what we take for the culmination of a long period of evolution, which is modern day civilization, is in actuality our nursery. The greatest and most important things are still to come, are yet to come. Not this great civilization we are in. This is just a nursery. This is what the Kundalini is telling us, because we haven't even gotten out of chakra 1 yet. Okay? This occurs as the unconscious contents, which we feel down below in our abdomen, slowly rise to the surface and become conscious. And through becoming conscious, we begin to have the conviction that this movement or development is what we are really after, what we were born for. I mean, this is awakens in some people. And so down below in the womb, what we experience is disturbed functions. It's the stirrings of the small seed, which is now just this embryo as it reaches consciousness and can eventually become a full-grown tree. So he's saying, looking at the symbol of Muladhara in this way, we understand that the purpose of Kundalini Yoga and the purpose of existence is awakening that seed, and awakening the serpent. Awakening the Kundalini serpent means to separate the impersonal realm from the personal realm of Muladhara. We're going to have that become you're not the master in your own house. That was Jung's first realization, that there was and everybody has dreams of this, is that they are in a house where they're intruders, where they don't own it. And yet they're living there and there's some kind of sneaking around because they don't know where the owner is, but they know they're not the owner, or they find rooms that they didn't know about, So anyway, with the awakening of the impersonal, as the impersonal within us, this unconscious aspect awakens, a new order of things comes about. So from the standpoint of the living archetypes, the living impersonal gods, this world is less than child's play. It is the seed in the earth and mere potentiality. Let me see. Hi, Tim and Charles. Just getting started here. I'm not too far. I'm going to try to go as fast as I can, too. I don't know. This is pretty long, but I'm going to try to cover it, the big topics, and then we can discuss it. And maybe next time we can go in it to a little more leisurely. But when one succeeds in awakening the Kundalini, it moves out of its mere potentiality, and we begin to enter a world of both that's impersonal, totally different from this world, and not in Muladhara. It's not in time anymore. Now, he mentioned this, and I mentioned this at the beginning. This is exactly why he interrupted the vision seminars of Christiana Morgan's visions to discuss the Kundalini, because he was getting a lot of people asking about her personal characteristics, and he wanted to tell them that when we're talking about dreams, and particularly visions that are at a high level, that now this is not going to be pleasant to everyone's ears, but this is Jung speaking, that her personal side was negligible in comparison to her visions. They correspond, that the visions are universal and they are impersonal. And her visions correspond to the world of the Kundalini and not to the world of Muladhara. The visions describe the development of the impersonal world and of the Kundalini, and not of Mrs. So-and-so. not of Christiana Morgan personally. Any personal incidents would be that you discuss as far as Christiana is concerned are from the Muladhara point of view, from the rational point of view of the definite world. But from the standpoint of Kundalini Yoga, I mean, any chakra above Muladhara, the personal is not interesting and is merely accidental. Okay. So, I mean, and this is really what, Henry Corbin and, Jeffrey Raff and all these people are trying to do is, and Jung says, the great question is, are we going to relate or be related to an eternal aspect of our cells or not? And he's going to make a kind of a snide remark about Freud and Adler here in just a second. Muladhara is the world of illusion, and from the point of view of the Kundalini, and correspondingly, the world of the impersonal experience and the world of the gods is an illusion from Muladhara's point of view. And so this brought it into this incomparable opportunity to understand what is meant by impersonal experience. And so when you contrast the duality of the personal versus the impersonal, human psychology's form of bewildering crisscross. It says on the one side, on the rational side, you have psychologies that are concerned only with the personal aspect, and where the personal is the only meaningful thing. And there's another psychology. There's only one, Jung's, in which these personal things are utterly uninteresting, valueless, futile, and illusory. Oh, hi, Jordy, too. Just saw you come in. So the existence of this second psychology allows us the possibility of looking at this world from an outside standpoint. And Jung is saying that only if you have this outside standpoint are you going to be able to really evaluate reality, and so the point outside is only given by symbols, the symbols of the religious experiences of dreams and visions, personal experiences of dreams and vision. So if one succeeds in awakening the Kundalini, what starts in us is not a personal development. What starts in us are impersonal happenings, which you should not identify with. And if you try to identify with them, you will soon get an inflation, which he just says is another form of lunacy. The great difficulty in experiencing the unconscious through these, in this manner, is that one identifies with it and becomes a fool. It says you must not identify with the unconscious. That's really what Jung did. I mean, which stopped, he took the attitude of Prometheus, that he was going to keep his human standpoint, and he's going to tell us too how important Muladhara is. Muladhara is not at all unimportant. But the other 6 chakras are important too. But then you see that all the events that happen in the impersonal, the non-human ordered things, cling to us, and we cling to them. So I mean, what I think he means by that is, as we're experiencing through personal experience the unconscious, the center of gravity of our awareness starts to move towards the middle plane, the one that the thin place where heaven and earth are only 3 feet apart, where the permeable, the barrier between the invisible world and Muladhara becomes permeable. So I think that when these visions start to cling to us and we cling to them, that has an idea that it's pulling us over. Okay. Anyway, the Kundalini movement pulls us with it, and we are part of this movement, particularly in the beginning. So we notice that we are part of the movement, and which that implies is we contain, of course, we do contain seeds. The seeds in us and in the Muladhara are sprouting and moving, and our awareness moves with them. You know, and again, one must not identify with it. They are events outside the human realm. And, the idea, it's absolutely necessary to maintain the rational standpoint, but still, now what he says that the ego has two aspects is one to be the medium of expression of the contents of the unconscious, and the other one, I mean, in other words, to understand them wordlessly. And then the other aspect is to then take our fabulous words and grammar and do a circumambulation of them, amplify them, and try to bring a meaning in words to that. That's what the rational ego and can provide the unconscious, which it doesn't possess. Is this what Marie-Louise von Franz, the unconscious contents long for the light. They long for the light, and this is also in alchemy. They long for the heat of ego attention. Ego attention is the fire under the vessel, which awakens that aspect in us, which is asleep in alchemy as well. These aspects that are asleep in alchemy that need to be, she says, do not judge me because I'm black and stuck in the mire. What she means is your lack of attention has made me thus. The fact that we ignore her, whether it's the Great Mother, Sophia, the Anima, or whoever, So anyway, the idea of impersonal psychic experience is very strange to Muladhara awareness. It's difficult to accept, and because that we initially think that anything we experience in the unconscious is ours. It belongs to us. We thought it. It didn't just come to us. It didn't spring up from where that was one of the two original words for truth was aletheia, the absence of forgetting, and the other one was that which sprouts up from the earth of its own, and that's our entelechia, or this root, the rhizome within us that has yet to sprout, because that's another analogy to the Kundalini, the rhizome. Anyway, you have great trouble disidentifying. It's my unconscious, it's his unconscious, it's her unconscious. So we can't disidentify these impersonal events from ego awareness. And so even if we do recognize it, that it's not ego, we're still a long way from realizing what it means and what it implies, So this is kind of an interesting little journey here. And he describes individuation later, which is just mind-blowing, And anyway, these experiences are secret. They can't be understood by the Muladhara world. That's what secrets mean. You can't even talk about them because you expose yourself to misunderstanding and misinterpretation, and they have a destructive effect on the Muladhara world. And yet the convictions of the Muladhara world are very necessary. It's exceedingly important that we are born into this world. He says there's plenty of people who were never born into this world, into Muladhara, and have experienced. They seem to be here. They're walking about, but they're not yet born. They're still in the womb. and uh, they're in the world only on parole, soon to be returned to the pleroma, you know, where they came from originally. So they've never really left the realm of infinity. And this is the Poer, Peter Pan, the children that never grow up. They never leave the infinite realm of Never Never Land. They're suspended in air, living the provisional life. So they really have not achieved Muladhara yet. They say, I am living here only on the following conditions. If my parents behave according to my wishes, I might stay. But if they do something I don't like, I will remove myself from history and I will go back to Never Never Land. So they are leading this provisional, conditional life of someone who is still connected by an umbilical cord as thick as a ship's rope to the pleroma, their archetypal world of splendor and bliss. Why should I leave? If you won't do what I say, I'm going back. Everything's blissful here, but he says it's most important that we should be born. We must come into this world. Otherwise, you cannot realize the self. This is something I've learned too. And, one of the great teachings of this was from the Emerald Tablets of Hermes Trismegistus, where he gets to the realm of albedo. And then he says, no, this isn't it. And he has to return to the earth, to the rubedo, because his strength is perfected when he returns to the earth, or when it turns to the earth. So unless we have a very strong Muladhara presence, our separation from it means nothing. He's going to actually say this, a little better than I just did. But if you don't do this, you're just thrown back into the dewdrop in the cosmic sea you never lived. It's utterly important that one should be in this world, that they fulfill their entelecheia, the seed of their bodily existence. Otherwise, it's useless for them to begin the Kundalini, which is the separation of the impersonal from the personal, because there's nothing to detach from. You've never joined. So you are simply thrown back into the cosmic sea. Nothing happened. Your life was a valueless experience. So we must believe in this world. We must make roots. We must do the best we can. And in this world that is so definite. And it absolutely matters that this treaty must be signed. And no matter that, the realm of the 30s was the realm of treaties. Every couple of years, there's a treaty that was going to save everybody from annihilation, but they didn't work out so well. No matter how futile, you must believe in it. You must almost have a religious conviction in this Promethean standpoint in the banal world, so that you were born, so that he says, you must put your signature under the meaningless treaty. So there's a trace left of you after, there's a trace in this world, so that you have a history. This does not happen if now he's going to describe the world of not being born. The seed becomes lodged in a thick area of air that kept it suspended. And so it never touched the ground, and it could never produce the plant. And so if you must touch the reality in the world in which you live and stay for several decades. And then the impersonal process can begin. Okay. You must touch the reality in the world in which you live and stay for several decades. And if you leave your trace there, then you have something to detach from. The impersonal realm process can begin. That's a great wisdom, don't you think? I mean, it's really giving the thing of the Kundalini, when he describes it in this way, is very illuminating. the shoot must come out of the ground. If the seed never got into the ground, nothing can come out. No linga, no kundalini can be there because you're just still staying in the infinity that was always there before. So anyway, I might jump ahead here. The idea, now he says, the idea that the ego can sublimate itself. Now he's talking about leaving Muladhara and why it's necessary to detach from Muladhara. So after all these praise of Muladhara, he's going to start telling us that still we can't do it in Muladhara. The ego can't help you now. That's what every dream says. That's what every fairy tale says. The favored sons of the king can't lift the enchantment and cure the curse because they're the son of King Ego. The only one that can do it is the one who detaches from the ego and uses the help of animal helpers, the instincts, the fool, the unfavored son, the one that was Cinderella or whoever, the idea that the ego can sublimate itself and become entirely spiritual with no hair left on its body is an inflation. It's utterly impossible, he says, to do that. It makes no sense. We need a new scheme. And so now we speak of the impersonal realm because we know the ego can't do it. The ego is the personal realm. The personal realm cannot sublimate itself and become entirely spiritual with no hair left on its body. That's an inflation. And he says they know this very well in India. They speak of the buddhi and the kundalini. The buddhi is the personal consciousness. Kundalini is the other consciousness, and they never mix them up. So anyway, let's see if I can skip a little bit of this. The Kundalini, the chakras symbolize the development of the impersonal life. So we're going to get a new link here. It's an initiation symbolism. It's a cosmogonic myth. Now he's talking about the whole chakra system. Symbolizes the development of the impersonal life, not of Christiana Morgan's personal life, her ego life. Her visions describe the development of her impersonal life. And if we don't get that, we're the ego that thinks it can sublimate itself with no hair on its body, which he says is just an inflation. That can't do it. It needs to invent a new scheme that's related to the impersonal world. So, and he gives an analogy of a Pueblo myth, which is almost exactly mirrors the Kundalini, and as does the Book of the Dead of the Tibetan Bardo. If you ever read that, you're going the other way. In fact, Joseph Campbell loved to do that he would first do the Kundalini yoga, and then he would do the Tibetan Book of the Dead coming back, and it's almost the same trip. So anyway, the Kundalini is very similar to any initiation cult. It's the awakening of this body, this little, in Australia or any other country, a culture, this Kundalini awakening is you'll find it there. This is just very subtle, now he's, there's Svadhisthana, which is her favorite resort. He just, which is the realm of the sexual organs. He just kind of, doesn't even mention it, but here it is. It's it has the makara, because what really it's representing, and this is very summarized, so don't quote me on it. And I'm not an expert on Kundalini yoga, but it's really represents baptism. It represents what, for Jung's purposes only, it represents being put under the water and coming back up, and don't get eaten by the Makara. You know, this one actually shows the Makara. So when you're baptized into the unconscious, don't get eaten by the Makara. Okay, there's the Makara. Okay, so now, so he doesn't hardly even mention, he's going to go straight to Manipura, which is the city of the shining jewel, or the fullness of jewels. It has something to do with the treasure hard to attain. So first, we take this personal being from Muladhara, and we thrust him under the water into the unconscious, and we are pushing them down there into the depths, into the baptismal font, and so they can experience the devouring quality or attribute of the sea. And what does it devour? It devours eco-consciousness. Okay, and so if you pass through that danger of the baptism, you next enter the center of Manipura, which means the fullness of jewels. Okay, so we're jumping from Muladhara directly to the third chakra. By the way, these chakras also, Joseph Campbell points out, the first and the seventh are related, the second and the sixth, the third and the fifth. There's this relationship between them. But now, what he says, too, is that there is an enantiodromia between each chakra. In other words, the first chakra is where we're put under the water in the baptism. So what happens? What is the enantiodromia after a baptism? And you'll find it almost explicitly in many, and he's going to give examples, many religions, is you become the sun. You become Helios. So if you pass through the danger, you reach the next center of Manipura, which means the fullness of jewels. It's the fire center, the place where the sun rises, the initiates at the end of the ceremony of the baptism were put on a pedestal and worshipped as the god Helios. This is in the Isis myth, and the deification always follows the baptismal rite. We're born into a new existence, a very different being with a different name. After the baptism, you suddenly become the sun. You're put on a pedestal, and you're worshipped as the sun, as the god Helios. And he says the same thing happens in Catholic baptism. The Godfather holds the child. The priest approaches with a burning candle, and he says, "Dono tibi lucem aeternam." I give thee eternal light, which means I give you relatedness to the sun, is what he's saying. So you reach the immortal soul, which you did not possess before, and you were twice born through the baptism. And Christ himself received his mission and Spirit of God in the baptism of the Jordan. And by the way, I've always had this problem, and I'm not the only one, because somebody wrote a book about it, about the number 316 showing up in my life all the time. My first apartment was on 3rd Avenue and 16th Street, and my wife calls me and says, would you pick me up? I'm on 16th Street and 3rd Avenue, and anyway, in Matthew 3:16, we hear about the baptism. And in John 3:16, we hear where Christ becomes a fire being, okay? There's an aspect of John 3:16 that is related to the eternal light, okay? Where in Matthew 3:16, it's related to his baptism. So there's this aspect of the baptism and the eternal light are related. So Jesus only became a Christus, which means the anointed one, after baptism, and he's now twice born. So before he was Jesus, the son of a carpenter. Now he is an impersonal personality. This is what we're going to be focusing on. He's a symbolic personality. That's what personality number 2 is. That's what we're going to be talking about here, you know, and what he's trying, the point he's trying to get across in the vision seminars. Anyway, Manipura is the center of identification with the light, with the sun, with the God, and with the impersonal. It's where one becomes part of the impersonal, and is now has a relatedness to timeless and spaceless realms. It's because of the fire, you know, and that catches us. Okay, um, we're going to talk about the fact that we're seized by it. You know, it's not intellectual, and nothing that happens here is intellectual assent. It is a process of just being seized. So now at this point, we're no longer in space. We belong to a fourth dimensional realm, a fourth dimensional order of things where space does not exist and time is not, where there is only infinite duration and the eternal realm. You know, now this would be the realm of the pleroma, the realm of images. You know, it exists, yet it exists outside of time. And yet it's the informing wisdom of everything that happens in time. You know, we have this neg entropy, this opposite of entropy, this improbable system of order of a bee colony or of the human brain, you know, or of a hummingbird that migrates from Central America to Canada. You know, how did that happen? What law of thermodynamics explain that? You know, I mean, there's just this idea of this this realm of infinite duration outside of time and space, which Jung called the realm of images, and it speaks in images, and it speaks. You know, what I've always said, the reason it speaks to the realm in images is because it never encountered a creature like the non-knuckle walking hominid Homo mythicus before, you know. And so when it spoke to Brother Bear, it had to speak both in story. I think it speaks in story but mostly in images, because it doesn't have a grammar in words. So that's its practice. So how does it do with humans? Well, it knows our language very well. And by the way, did you notice in your dreams, if you're a German, it speaks German, and if you speak English, it speaks English. You know, so that's kind of interesting. Yet it's not us that's doing this speaking. You know, no way. I mean, some of the things you hear, and yet it's speaking in our own language, and you actually uses the sort of the lingo of the day. You know, and also will pick up on things that were on TV last night or something, you know. So it's this eye that sees things that we don't see. So anyway, you know, he goes on with some other examples of this, and this is from Egyptian mythology. We'll kind of skip over that, but you know, it's they're relating to the infinite duration. Feebly, what was interesting about alchemy, you know, was the meeting of Alexander and his Greek philosophers with the death cult of Egypt in Alexandria, you know, and they knew all about these chemical preparations to preserve bodies and things, you know. And then here comes these philosophers, you know, from Greece, and they want to know, well, what is this you're talking about? And so then alchemy kind of became this hybrid of the Greek philosophers and the Egyptian realm, rich religion of the dead, which involved chemistry, you know, and alchemical things. But anyway, Manipura, so now we've skipped Svadhisthana completely. So in dreams of baptism, we go into water, we're pushed on the unconscious to be cleansed and renewed. That's Svadhisthana. That's all he tells us about it. And what follows after you make an acquaintance with the unconscious. Now, in Manipura, which is the Nantyadromya of Svadhisthana, you become, you encounter what's awakened is a very powerful source of energy, fire, desire, passions, and the whole emotional world just break loose. And every devil in our nature becomes activated once we are went after our baptism, you know. And so we see a new picture of ourselves, and there it is that something is going on here, and it's just seizing us, you know. There's nothing, the rational thinking can't stop it, because it's you know, what they say about going into Zen, you know, unless you're like somebody with your hair on fire, don't start, you know. I mean, it doesn't help to be conceptual. What they're saying is you also have to have this fire awakened within you, or nothing will happen. You know, you need both the heart and the fire, and the water, and the initiation of the unconscious. So he just says here, you suddenly know this unconscious is very, very real. And he says it's like a child, but in the unconscious, the Muladhara world is afraid of it. And it's like a child goes behind a door playing hide and seek, and then you hear a voice say, "No one is behind this door. Don't look here." And he says, well, that's about what our psychologies are. He says, Freud and Adler are two marvelous psychologies that say, nothing's behind this door. Don't look here. There's nothing important here. You know, so he says they're sort of apotropaic. You know, they're like magical realms that are designed to ward off the evil of what's behind that door. There's nothing important here. We don't need to look there, you know. But Jung says this. Now, this is Jung speaking, so you can take it or leave it. But he says, but there is something behind that door. And there are such powers. You know, he says, the one thing that separates me from everyone else is, I believe, the psyche, the independent living wisdom, which speaks to me directly, is real. Okay. So once you're acquainted with the unconscious in the world of fire, things get red hot, and you're going, you go right into the fiery center of the earth. It was this enantiodromia, and this is what the fullness of jewels means. The fullness is the fire. It is full of desire, passion, and emotion, which are absolutely necessary to keep this. It's the energy of the whole process. Okay. But if it's not there, you're going to be a dilettante, like I am. You know, someone who has a day job. Okay. So anyway, but I got a little bit of fire in me. You know, someone who's not on fire is nothing. He's ridiculous. He's two-dimensional. We must be on fire, even if it appears foolish to others. The flame must burn somewhere. Otherwise, no light shines. There's no warmth. There's nothing to move the process along. So against all reason, it seems like a waste of time, but according to reason, but Kundalini says it is the fullness of jewels. It's the source of all energy. And you know, this is what he quotes Heraclitus, that war is the father of all things, you know. So passion is the father of all things, you know. It's this passion. Without fire, nothing moves the process along. So Manipura is the third center. Let me see if I can get a picture of Manipura here. I think it's just the triangle pointing down, isn't it? I'm pretty sure. Yeah. That's Manipura. It's yellow and red. The triangle points down. You know, in the heart chakra, you'll have two triangles. One points up, one points down. Okay. So anyway, he moves on along pretty fast here. He says that Manipura is located in the solar plexus. So it's in our guts. It is something that, do you have any conscious control over your stomach and your solar plexus and your diaphragm? You know, I mean, this is what is also so important about it. It pushes us forward, you know, no matter what our lazy ego will. I mean, freedom just goes away when you reach Manipura. And he's talking about these psychic localizations. You know, the solar plexus is where Manipura lives. That means it's not under control of ego. You know, we're not, we have no freedom when it comes to Manipura. And then he mentions Mountain Lake, you know, who thought with his heart, so he thinks with anahata. And digestion is sort of thinking through the guts. And the heart is you know, I know it in my guts. I know it's right. You know, I know it in my blood and my bones and my muscles. That's Manipura speaking, you know. But the heart is a different center, but it's a very definite center. You know it in your head, but you don't know it in your heart. And he says there's an extraordinary distance from the head to the heart. 10, 20, 30 years or a whole lifetime is the distance from the head to the heart. You know, you could know something for 40 years and it's never touched the heart yet. Only when it is realized in the heart do we really take notice of it, you know. And from the heart, he says it's an equally long distance to the solar plexus, or the Manipura, where we are caught, become on fire. All freedom evaporates once we are on fire, once we are caught. Because we're beyond ego, beyond the head here, in the realm of bones, blood, and muscles. And now he's going to talk about anahata, you know, which is the heart chakra. Not having too much time to talk about it, but let's see. This is anahata. It's also green, which is kind of comforting. You know, it's a green color. It is. I don't really know the symbolism of the mandala, but anyway, I do want to mention the distance from the head to the heart. My wife's father was a religion philosophy professor for almost 60 years, and he was just the most amazing man I ever met. But he really confused my wife, who was a baby mama. You know, you can give her a preemie baby and she'll know exactly what to do with it, and she won't be afraid, and she'll just jump right in, you know. But you know, we went to Norway one time, and she wanted to visit all the churches because she wanted to see, her father was a religion professor. She wanted to know if God was there. So here she is looking around. She's trying to connect the head and the heart, you know. I mean, her father is her head, but she doesn't feel it in her heart, you know. This has been a big, you know, she is doing Jungian analysis. You know, I did it for about 14 years, but anyway, she's doing Jungian analysis, and this is really the focus of her analysis, is the disconnection from the logos, her father, her animus figure, who was this amazing man, and her heart, because what she knew that this was so important to him, and she wants to understand it, but she doesn't feel it in her heart, you know. So this is kind of what her, as this one who can take a a preemie baby and not be afraid and do anything, just jump right in and take care of it, can't understand her very academic father. Her father told me a dream right before he died. He had he was driving in the front of a refrigerated truck, and in the back of the truck were all these animals under refrigeration. They weren't dead, but they were in suspended animation. And it kind of, was one of this, it seemed to me, what was lacking was the earth, it was just too spiritual, But anyway, I don't know if we can go on too much with the Anahata. We'll have to probably take it up next time. But let me see if I can just do a 2-minute summary of it. It is, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to just see. I got one more little thing. Let me see if I can find it. I don't know. Well, anyway, we'll discuss Anahata next time. But it means, let me say a few things about Anahata. It means not hit, unstruck, and it means, it is, this is from Joseph Campbell, it's the sound of one hand clapping. And Jung also said that European consciousness would never get past the fourth chakra. And that's because of its, what he said about that we cannot leave Muladhara because of our Promethean streak, because we have a mythology of the hero journey, of the northern hunting tribes of Europe and of the northern hemisphere anywhere, have a certain mythology that has to do with the hero journey. And I think there's an aspect of that is experienced in Prometheus. He will not succumb. He will not dissolve into the cosmic sea, in other words, Well, anyway, why don't we just open it up for any comments about anything? We just go around the room, and then when we're done, I'm going to turn it over to Gary. So, Gary, do you have any comments?
I do. So it's very fortuitous that we're talking about Kundalini right now. For the past couple of months, I've gone up to Glow. That's one of those websites where you pay $15 a month. They've got all these different types of yoga that you can practice. Actually, it's a great site. I really recommend it highly. For a free version, you can go to Insight Timer, but on Glow, I decided to branch out beyond my normally very narrow yoga and try some of the Kundalini yoga. And that was actually really interesting because about the same time that I decided to try the Kundalini yoga on Glow, there was, I got invited to join this little meditation group, and they do what they call a Kriya. And a Kriya is really Kundalini without doing the binds. And the binds are, in your root chakra, you try to send, you imagine sending the energy up to like your third eye or your crown chakra. And the Kriyas, what they're really doing is they're kind of playing with the CO2 belts, because you're doing, this really fast, deep breathing with, maybe a pause for a little bit, and then you'll go back to the fast breathing. So at the end of this, you are in a very altered state. I mean, getting up and walking around would probably be a little bit dangerous. I usually have to wait around for like the next 20 minutes or so to wait for the CO2 balance to get, somewhat back in adjustment. And for the same reason, you can't do like, these things day after day, you're probably going to do bad physiological things, but it is fairly trippy. But what I found interesting is that in doing the Kundalini yoga, and remember, I'm just like absolute beginner, I'm not making any particular claims. I noticed that when I do, you do some of the breathing and then you do the bind where you raise the energy. And what I thought was really interesting is I found that I was getting into more of a altered state than from doing the Kriya that was, and the Kundalini one, they're not doing the one that I'm doing, Kia Miller. on Glow, she's not doing enough of the deep breathing to really alter the CO2 balance like the other Kriyas. So, looking at it from absolute beginner, I was really shocked because what I found is like, oh my gosh, it's like, using these active imagination techniques that we also use in active imagination, you can definitely get into some really interesting states. And because, I certainly don't consider myself any big yoga, but, I'd really recommend that, people go out there and give this an experiential type of try because, um, it's right down the path of the practices that we've been doing. And I've got one other comment, and that is on Insight Timer. Uh, there's they have a lot of chakra practices, and one of the ones I found that I really liked, it's called the Wong, WONG cello. And so she's a cello player, and from the way she plays, she's a classical cello player, so she's very good. But what she does is she composes a song for each chakra, and then she gives kind of a talk about the chakra, and then she plays the song for it. And again, kind of like trying to drop the rational mind and using the active imagination. I found you could really feel the resonance of the sound in the chakras. So it's one of those things that if you can just let go the rational mind, and to me, when I think of this, I think of, if you can let go of the rational mind, in a way, you're now thinking with the heart when you're trying to connect with these things. If you try to connect with these things intellectually, you look at it and scratch your head and kind of wonder what it is that they're doing. But if you can let go of the rational mind and try to feel and just, be as egoless as you possibly can, you can get some really interesting experiences out of this. And again, to me, this is all, it's all part of the imagination process, the activation. But I think that, thinking with the heart really is kind of working within the imagination. Anyway, sorry I went on so long.
Oh, that's okay. You guys can talk about anything you want, but you might want to, do you guys have any ideas about Manipura, awakening the flame within us, have your hair on fire. What do you think, Kevin? You got any
Yeah,
comments?
I don't have much thoughts. Yeah, I think it's a very interesting subject. I feel like the Indians really understood energy and its system, and I don't see Jung deviate anything from that. I don't see that. I see his dream analysis is another form of chakra system, basically. So the furthest down is the paradise and so on. And so there is no deviation from Jungian stance to any, if we think of it symbolically. So I don't really have much to add.
Well, one thing he said about Christiana Morgan's visions, we'll go back to them after we're done with Kundalini. And by the way, we're only touching the surface of this. Wait till you get in here. And what he's really doing is what he told Christiana Morgan about her dreaming of the China Taoist person, that it is a very reasonable thing, but it didn't come out of her. It's something she heard. So it wasn't really something that was awakened in her, but it represented sort of an animus figure. What I think Jung is going to try to do is trying to link the wisdom of Kundalini yoga with European consciousness, which is unfortunate. I mean, I don't know how universal all our consciousnesses are, I think, at root. But anyway, it's going to be related, I think, not going to stray far from alchemy, and it's not going to stray far from the European initiation rites either. Marina, do you have anything to say about it? You don't? Okay, well, how about you, Carlos? Charles?
Yeah, I think the chakra system is a really interesting kind of tool for symbolism. It's like I don't know, it's a really cool system. It's really old as far as I know. I mean, really, really old. But I don't know. You know, there's the correlation with the colors, which is the same as, you know, like ultraviolet down to infrared. Acidically, it's acidic to alkaline, and then the heart, the center chakra is like acidically neutral. I mean, the system has particular significance and importance to me because I've had experiences where I feel like the idea has kind of been validated for me. Like I know that the spine can pick up on like really subtle energy and almost like amplify it. For instance, I was laying down one time and my cat walked along my back, but didn't actually touch it. Didn't touch my back, but he was walking along it. And I could feel, I mean, so strongly, like I just like my back just like jerked and arched just uncontrollably, just because his energy was literally started at the bottom of my spine. And then he moved along up to my head. And it was like shockingly strong. Then also, you know, with one of my experiences that I had that was, you know, most powerful experience in my life, I feel like I did have the crown chakra open. And, you know, and there's the Isis dream symbolism of the baby boy on top of the head with the crown and the wreath. Well, there's this, in mythology, there's like, I think it was Egyptian, you know, the baby boy is like positioned, or the baby boy, like prince or king, he's positioned sitting on the lotus of heaven. And it's like literally where there's mythology where like you know, the Christ child, so to speak, is positioned on the lotus. And of course, the crown chakra is the lotus. And I think it's honestly, it's a system of symbolism that's extremely sophisticated, and they really knew what they were talking about. And a lot of it's been lost to time. It's just as symbolic and psychological as it is physical. I mean, yeah, but no, that's all I got.
You can compare it with astrology, with the I Ching, with the Tibetan Book of the Dead, with alchemy. I mean, it's just these amazing wisdom systems. Ramakrishna too. It's actually physical. He could feel the serpent moving up the spine, just like you described. You know, his followers will say, "Well, what's it like when it's at this chakra?" And he could tell them. Tim, do you have any?
Boy, I'm thinking a lot, but mostly trying to channel images. And so I can't put them into words, but it's really rich material. And I'm going to be doing some work on images because of it. Thanks.
Yeah, well, it is. If we just, it's a fairly short book. You know, there's not that many seminars, but I think it's gonna be well worth our time to go through it, and then we'll go back to the visions, which I think were so fun. Nick, do you have any comments about it? Nice to meet you. Tell us about yourself a little bit. Or
nice to meet you too. Wow, I was just really quite bowled over by this. You made a comment about the use of the Kundalini going up and out, or doing the ascension and using the Book of the Dead to do the
Yeah.
descent. And I found that fascinating. I'd like to hear more about that and read some resource on that if I.
Yeah, definitely. I have a short audio where Joseph Campbell goes through it.
Okay.
But I mean, basically, you know, where they come to the dead man, you're seeing the light, hold to it. If you don't hold to it, then you descend to the sixth chakra and you go all the way down to Muladhara, or the first chakra, and then you're born in a little baby or something, you know.
Beautiful.
So you're born. So you screwed it up.
It's a wonderful mythological reminder that also parallels in my mind with where Antara Ali goes with the Eighth Circuit model, the Eighth Circuit model that Leary came up with, and then Robert Wilson wrote so comically and delightfully on. And then Antara Ali is the author who's taken that same chakra-based organizational concept and moved it back into the body, and the importance of grounding back. The fact that when we go up and out the top of our heads and into this wider field that's definitely beyond the small self, into that more unspeakable unconscious, that we can get kind of fucked up by that. We can get lost by that. And that functionally, if we don't have that strong Muladhara ground, that rooting depth in our consciousness, if we can't get back down to earth sufficiently, that we do ourselves a problem of hanging out in that crazy space. And it reminded me of the Zen process, that you can't just transcend and get off into nirvana, that you actually have to come back into the world barefoot and wander through the marketplace.
Chop wood, carry water.
You gotta come full circle, or you haven't actually done that. You've only gone halfway up the mountain. You gotta come all the way back down.
Yeah.
And
now mountains and when I started out, mountains were mountains.
Yes.
And now they're back to mountains.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the aspect too, it was so beautiful to me in the Emerald Tablets, that its strength is perfected when it returns to the earth. I thought that was so beautiful, that him to tell us how important that Muladhara was.
Well,
Anyway, well, thank you, Nick. And
thank you. It's profound lecture. I appreciate it.
Well, Gary's going to have something, and maybe you can talk then too. But I just thought we'd go quick, so Jordy has some time. Jordy, do you have any comments?
Hello.
Hello.
Nick, nice to meet you. I did myself think about Robert Anton Wilson Night Circuit thing myself at some point. Now, Gary, thank you very much for your insights. I am fully interested in your experience, and I'll appreciate if you share links, what you said with some more detail. I am fully interested in that. Again, thank you.
Yeah. Well, as soon as we're done here, Gary is going to tell us more about this. So let's see.
Great. You supplied a hell of a lot of materials which had the virtue of being polysemic, which open all sorts of lateral connections to things. You did that with a wonderful synthesis. Now, I think your notes merit to be put together in some sort of text. I encourage you to do that.
Yes, I will. I'll send them out.
I'll try to help. I mean, I'll appreciate you having as a basis your text to do something in Spanish. That will take time and effort, of course.
Okay, definitely. Yeah. Well, I kind of just try to make an outline of each paragraph, but I kind of get overboard on it.
And put notes, etc. I am willing to help. I don't know if there is an efficient software for voice recognition, like the YouTube subtitles or something like that. But that could help.
Yeah, Gary.
No,
Gary
one
has.
technical. Yeah, you have one technical point. When you said the access of the intelligence of breathing, of digestion, of all these chakra centers somehow. You said that in the middle. There is a lot to discuss here. I mean, you can ego control breathing, not much more than that.
Mhm.
You can have lateral access to the body reactions with proper training as per gut feeling, if you wish.
Mhm.
But that's a whole story that will take some time to expand here. Again, I mean, what's it? Thank you, all of you.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sorry I had went through it so fast. I didn't even get through it, but you know, it's rather dense, but I think if we keep going through it, I mean, there's such wonderful revelations here. Now, how about Jan, Dawn, or Kathy? If you want to say anything, just unmute. And Angel, do you have anything? They usually like to text, but feel free, Jan or Dawn or Kathy. Angel, did you have any comments? Or I don't see you have a microphone though, I guess. I do. You might not have one. I don't see one. Yeah, I'm sorry. So, and then our phone person here, I don't know if you can unmute either. But anyway, now I'm going to turn it right back to Gary here. And I think we can have further discussions, but that's, I'm sorry there's so much material here, but I loved it. And we'll start with Anahata next time. Okay. So Gary, it's all yours.
Great. Yeah, so I kind of wanted to go back through the liminal mind. First off, you know, I asked Craig to send that out, and I think it might have looked a little bit buried, but did people get that paper that was sent out that described how to do it?
I'll send it out again. If you don't have, if you're not on our email address, like for instance, Nick or Angel or our phone person, if you'll put your email address in the chat, I will get you on the email address. So, but I'm going to send it out now, and I'll put the link in the chat.
Right, right. So, you know, I think I'll just, I'm going to go through and describe the technique from the book. And so but the thing that I really find fascinating about this is that, you know, one, it sounds very much like what we do in active imagination. And yet it sounds like it might be, you know, more effective for doing active imagination than, you know, just sort of the ad hoc way that you know, that we go about it. And I guess, you know, so the author, when she describes this process, and she's been working at it for years, she describes, you know, going into public places, like she'll go to a park, she'll sit down on a park bench, and she'll put herself into that hypnagogic state, you know, that state where you're just about to drift off to sleep, but you have some conscious awareness, and you hold that, you know, you hold that. And that to me is like, you know, I just, you know, it's kind of jaw dropping that she's able to do that. But at the same time, you know, it reminds me of back when I was in college, they had just gotten biofeedback equipment into the psych department. And if you wanted to sign up, you could sign up and you could go in the basement and you could hook yourself up and you could do these tapes where you would, you know, train yourself to, you know, relax like various parts of your body or like raise the temperature, you know, of one part. And so I signed up for this, and it took, you know, it's like you do it, you do it, you do it. You feel like you're not getting anywhere. And then slowly through time, you know, not through any particularly rational process, you actually get the ability to, you know, control some of these, the autonomic systems, which I think Jordy referred to as well, although I don't see him on anymore. Oh yeah, Jordy's still here. So, you know, I know exactly what he's talking about. And, you know, this whole process of active imagination, which to me is just incredibly difficult, or this hypnagogic process that's discussed in liminal dreaming. I mean, you know, and I think this is also one of those things that is not an easy exercise, not compared to meditation. Meditation, all you have to do is kind of, let go of the consciousness, and quiet the mind, and then just let it roll. But in a hypnagogic process, you have to hold that state and yet, come in with a bit of consciousness so that you can be an active observer, so that as images arise, you can kind of give them animation. And I think that process is, a lot more difficult. And at the end of this, I want to ask Craig to kind of walk us through, how long he's been doing it and how his process has kind of evolved through time. Because I think, it's one of those things that you don't start out with, being particularly good at it. And I think it takes a lot of patience, and it's kind of like the biofeedback. It's really, it's more a process of being willing to do it time and time and time again, and accepting, all the failures. And so for the last week, I did the liminal dreaming, pretty religiously, and I thought I'd report on that. And for me, I think, over 7 days, and this was some days if I felt tired, if I didn't have a very good night, and I was about to nap, I'd try it during the nap as well. And actually, it seemed to me, unfortunately, the most successful time was if you felt like you had to sit down and take a nap, because, a nap, you're not quite as tired as you are at night. You're not quite in the habit of lying in bed and, immediately dropping off to sleep. The one that I find the most difficult is if you're lying in bed and you're trying to maintain that consciousness and yet, feel sleepy. It's like, I tend to drop right through that into sleep. But practicing it in the morning, like if you wake up and you're still feeling really sleepy, and your consciousness is just barely starting to come back. In that state, I found it pretty easy to hold that level of consciousness, let the sleep part go forward and then let the images form. So with all of this though, I had like 3 times that it kind of happened where I got images that, were that weren't much, like in one, I was talking with this, yoga person, and we were discussing yoga nidra, and I couldn't remember any of the conversation. In another one, I look on top of my dresser drawers, and it's like, something is bubbling up in the mirror, almost like a lava flow. And then it occurs on the desk, but kind of reversed. And, and none of these things lasted particularly long. But let me read, the exercise for those of you that, didn't either get a chance to look at this or haven't looked at it yet. So the first practice is called the feedback loop. So this exercise is about surfing the edge of consciousness, moving back and forth between thought and dream. Lie or sit back and relax your body and mind as much as possible. With your eyes closed, let your mind drift, but don't fall asleep. You're waiting for something, an image, an idea, a hazy memory, perhaps a distant sound. You might imagine it as much as see, hear, or feel it. Allow your waking, rational mind to loosen its hold on your experience. Open yourself to whatever arrives. Eventually, something will appear. It might just be a little visual glimmer or a drifty thought. Maybe it's a slight tone or distant voices or an unfamiliar emotion. Whatever it is, once it's in your mind, breathe slowly and softly into it, allowing it to take shape, to move and shift on its own. Use your exhale to relax your body even further. As you breathe out, imagine you're animating whatever it is you're perceiving, like watering a plant with your attention. The exhale removes tension and energy from your mind and body and transfers it to the hypnagogic dream that's taking shape. If you start to fall fully asleep, sharpen your consciousness. The trick is to do it only slightly so you don't wake up completely. Try paying a little more attention to the act of paying attention. As you breathe your energy into the dream, hypnagogia will become easier to perceive. Especially at first, your hypnagogic dream may simply be moving points of light or color, faces turning towards you, or flashes of thought that shift into dream. The phenomena may also end quickly, but over time, this exercise will help you to enter hypnagogia more easily and stay there for longer periods of time. So that's the description. And I wanted to get some comments, and feel free to ask any questions at this point too. But I also wanted to get some comments from Craig on whether or not he feels like when he's doing his active imagination process, if some of that feels like it's in a hypnagogic state, or if he feels like it's more like a meditation that, he's just staring into the darkness. What do you say, Craig?
Well, when I do the same one every time, I actually do sense like the mount. I come to a ridge of a mountains. I can sense them, and then I can sense the forest. And sometimes I sense the mountains aren't there anymore, and there's the forest. And then I come to the river, and I don't wouldn't describe it as a hypnagogic state, but somehow I know the river's not there now. It's gone, and so I just walk across it, or sometimes it's dry and full of leaves, and yet I don't really sense it in a hypnagogic vision. But I do have hypnagogic visions. They are more related to the just kind of a where you just sort of doze off, and what Barbara Hanna calls a sudden drop, and then you have sort of these hypnagogic visions. But I mean, what I've been coming to realize that even though I'm going to continue this because I want to develop, because I'll see lately I've been seeing without any doubt a image of the face of the anima smiling at me, and she merges into my face, and things like that, and she'll come over and sit beside me here, and I actually see it. It's just so beautiful, and then there's a little bit of color and everything. So I want to keep that up, even though it doesn't seem to have a narrative yet. But I mean, to me, the way to get traction in active imagination for any of us is to do just a meditation to lower the level of ego consciousness. And to begin with, talk about your dreams. Have a dream ready and say, what does this mean? And then you have to have some figure you're talking to. And usually mine will either be the anima, but I think I was talking with the Great Mother and Sophia, and I think I'm going to go back and talk to them, because you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the anima, well, what do you think the Great Mother would think about this? And then I'm going to ask the Great Mother, what would you think the anima would think about this? And the idea is this dialogue that I have. What I didn't say, when I go back and read it, I know I did not say it. So now I have what I think is fairly genuine unconscious material. I'm sure it has a lot of conscious elements in it, but it's still, I know that some of those things in there are not me, because they are very critical of me, and in some of the Black Book things we didn't go over, but there's this one where Jung's personality number 2 is just reading the riot act to personality number 1, telling him how vain he is and how he sits around waiting for adulations, says he doesn't want them, but if he doesn't get them, feels resentment and hatred towards somebody. I mean, he's just going through. But let me just say this. It's like learning to play the violin. The hardest thing about learning to play the violin is to take the case down from the shelf and unbuckle the case and open it up. Just get it out and start practicing. You know, if you don't do it, you're never going to get anywhere, you know. But I mean, I just know, and I'll tell you, you might say, well, nothing ever happens. Well, try stopping it for 2 weeks. I grieve. My heart grieves when I'm away from it. And when I come back, I know that these figures that I'm saying, you know, have a quasi reality are not happy. And you can feel it. You can feel that they are not happy. But anyway, the whole idea is to more and more realize that to try to awaken. I mean, you know, I went through alchemy and Jeffrey Raff and everything. And I need to go back there because he just had such a wonderful. Now, you don't have to go through his ally work, okay, Gary. You know, we've already vetoed that, but just through the dialogue where you ask a question, even a personal question. You know, I'll say one thing. You know, like our grandson one time. We were playing bingo up in Minnesota and he never won one game. And he comes back and he goes up into his room and we hear him up there. He's talking to himself and he says, "Why am I so upset?" And then we hear a voice. He's the only one in the room. And he says, "Well, you're so upset because you played bingo for 4 hours and didn't got one game." And then he says, "Well, why should that upset me?" And he says, "Well, because everybody else won and you didn't win." I mean, you know, I mean, he was asking someone who was not him to explain why he was feeling this rage, you know, in him. But anyway, there's no rocket science to it. It's just do it, and you learn. And I wanted to read this one little thing that Jeffrey Raff wrote, and because I think it's so good. Is he wrote. He says, "I'm often amazed by the attitude of the entitlement of many people seeking individuation and visionary insight. They often grow angry and frustrated if no results are immediately forthcoming." And he says, "Well, it is the task of a lifetime to gain a glimpse of Sophia's kingdom, and which she promises," and this was a quote directly from her to Jeffrey Raff, "only to those that find me and subtly and ingeniously." See, I'm trying to do that too. I'm trying to keep finding different methods and constantly seek me out. So the idea is to subtly, ingeniously, and constantly seek her out. And I'm saying, even no matter how weak it seems, if you leave it, you're going to feel a sense of separation and grief. Anyway.
Jordy, you had something you wanted to say?
Indeed. Two things. What you said on morning, on the twilight time, when you are just before to be waken up, but you are not yet, and that's a fruitful time to deal with, that's very consistent with my experience. And it's amazing. And if you can, in my case, if I can spare 1 extra hour to get started, plenty of things appear. How to handle those things is another issue. I could share a couple of last half dreams and dialogues where I was still married to my ex-wife currently, etc., and was plenty of material for thought, some of them quite directly on my life at this point. Now, in my case, access to a dialogue to other channels, say feminine images or all the gamut, say Sophia, etc., it's much more tricky. I try to enter a dialogue, but the narrative overrides me. The second one, it's very light and very humorous, is for Craig Nelson. When you mention learning to play the violin, you push buttons for us who had learned to play the violin. And we don't want to be distracted here. But one cent, the main chore, the pain in the ass of learning to play the violin is the tediousness of being very exact where you put your both fucking hands, once and again ad nauseam, and until you ask yourself you were born for that. Now, when you have that in your memory, you understand why you don't pick the case, but that's another story. Now, again, what said before, I will appreciate very much if you share your materials and the text you have been reading, because they're very consistent with my experience. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Jordy. You know, I've got another question for you, Craig, too, because it's like, I know when you're doing this, you're getting up at like 2 in the morning or something, right?
Well, yes, you know, I have found, I don't know, I can only do it in the morning. I've tried to do it in the afternoon and it is so dead, but somehow in the morning I'm more permeable.
So how many hours of sleep have you had when you do this?
I hate to say it, but I go to bed around 8, 8:30 or 9, you know.
So like 5 hours.
Yeah, 5 or 6, yeah.
So to me, like, okay, if I were to do that, well, because that happens, because, you know, I'm older and I wake up, you know, I would be very close to, you know, like if I got up, you know, I would feel like taking a nap. So to me, that's actually really close to the hypnagogic state anyway. So, you know, that's why I thought, you know, so I was doing projecting here, but I was thinking, well, shoot, you know, I know he's like, you know, like just a little after midnight. He's got to be, you know, you've got to be tired and like, you know, your consciousness is close to a liminal state, even though you're keeping that edge of consciousness to do the projection. So yeah, you know, I suggest everybody get up at 1 or 2 in the morning next week and try this, you know.
Well, at least 4 or 5, or, you know, right after you get up. I mean, there is an idea there that something, maybe it's dawn consciousness or whatever, you know. Does anybody like, should we just go around real?
Craig, you're muted.
Yeah. Do you have anything to report on other than just what are you up to? Doing anything exciting?
Well, for me, I'm like, you know, I'm discovering all this free stuff on Insight Timer. And it's like, you know, when I find these, it's all stuff, you know, you have to disengage your rational mind and then just kind of try to engage with your heart. But, you know, but if you can let go of the rational mind and, you know, and listen to like these crystal bowl players and the cello playing to your chakras and stuff, you know, this is like, it's some really interesting, touching experiences.
How about you, Kevin? What have you been doing?
Yeah, I wish I could, like, because I work quite late and I don't go to sleep before 4 o'clock in the morning. So I wake up at 12 and I go straight to work. So yeah, but I just wanted to make a comment on Kundalini, because I read it a few years back, and what I found interesting in that concept was the opposite. You know, the more conscious awareness one has, the more one can realize the full potential. And so, which is different from sleeping the consciousness. It's more about waking as much as consciousness as possible, which I feel also is a different way. In many ways, but it's also very interesting. That's so I felt that was an interesting concept.
Marina, have you got anything to report on or that you've been doing lately?
Yep. What I've been doing is Zen tangling. So it's drawing, and it's quite complicated drawing, and yeah, that's what I've been doing. Lots of intricate little patterns, and it's quite it sort of focuses the mind, and that's what I'm pulled to at the moment. Yeah.
Well, that's your medium of expression speaking. Carlos, have you had any, what are you doing right now in your spiritual life? Anything you want to talk about, or not really? Not at this point. Well, how about Charles? Do you have anything to report on?
Not really. I'm just keeping track of my dreams and
Yeah.
trying to
Well, you-
work. That's pretty much the basis of anything psychological or spiritual that's going on, and just trying to make plans for the outer world and follow through with them. That's what I'm trying to do.
How about you, Tim? What's your big project you're working on?
Well, I'm always doing art about this stuff.
Mhm.
One of the projects I started tackling this week is trying to come up with maybe a series of films to help young men get in touch with their spiritual selves through sexuality. You know, I've got all these images of women, and for me, using the image of a woman kind of like an icon as an item of contemplation to get to a deeper level has been really rich, and I'm trying to figure out how to do that experience in such a way that somebody else could look at it and say, oh geez, I never thought of that, and can go that direction. And meanwhile, just in terms of the discussion today, I often do this business of getting up really early, like 4, and I'll sometimes go for a walk in the silent city, and for me that's a really rich time. You know, the darkness, especially in the north, used to be a little bit terrifying to me. You know, I kind of get this cabin fever thing, and now I think I've matured enough so that now I see the darkness as a kind of a womb that I can move into. And the last few weeks and days, I've been really nurturing these images that come in that magical time between sleep and reason, and just trying to take the image and again use it like an icon to just contemplate the image and not try to turn it into words, but to absorb it on that level underneath consciousness. And to me, that has a real richness to it.
Thank you. Nick, maybe you could tell us just what part of the country you're from, and you sound like you've got a very interesting life going in your. Maybe just tell us what your big project is. I think you're muted. Let me see if I can unmute you. Yeah. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
There I go. Sorry about that. Wow. So much rich content going on here. I'm really, yeah. So who am I? Well, I'm in Oklahoma after a lifetime of building up and becoming a judo and aikido teacher. I had to step away from that, and it's all become far more interior since then. I have background both with Native American ceremony as a ceremonial singer, as well as ordained in a Zen tradition, the Rinzai Zen lineage, and lately been getting way into the alchemical Jungian sort of occultist, Western occultist side of things, as well as these more modern thinkers like Leary and Wilson and Antero Ali with their models. And so my world is really made up of a mishmash of practices that have kind of cross-fertilized over time in a very strange way. Your discussion of the violin reminded me of my judo teacher, who compared, he said, there's more in common with learning to play the violin and studying judo than there was with judo and wrestling, most people would just throw wrestling in it, but he said, no, it is all about that steady precision that Jordy mentioned. It is about being very precise, moment to moment, with meticulous detail, just the same meticulous detail that's moment to moment consciousness as you step into a meditative place in the Zen tradition, where, yeah, it is a great relinquishing. But then the focusing of consciousness, going through into something like the shamanic work with the Native Americans, is to drive that out of a song and allow it expression in the world to go do a job for a holy man or a medicine man who's accomplishing healing with your raw material, so to speak, as you're doing that kind of work. And so it has a very different flavor, and it's much more that solar plexus, that the fiery expression thing that you spoke to today. I feel like I'm babbling, but the hypnagogic. So the hypnagogic and the interaction with active imagination and the whole discussion of being awake in the middle of the night really, really resonated with the dream yoga work that I ran into with Tenzin Wangyal. If there's an amazing little text that goes through chakra work, but it includes some of the Tibetan slant and the Bon religion slant on manifesting those with exercises that are frankly designed to keep you up in the middle of the night and and doing this active imaginal internalized process. So anyhow, it's fascinating. Thank you.
Well, one thing I think Nick would be very helpful. I mean, if you decide to come back, is if we could give you like the last 30 minutes, and you could take any topic you want and just kind of give us some of your. I'm Tim has done this for us, and Jordy, I think you're due too to just come with a presentation of anything that is important to you that you'd like to present. And I think, Nick, you've got a wealth of material there. Tim does, and Gary does, and I think any of us do. And, sometimes if we just tell our story, like either Marina or Charles or Kevin want to just talk about some important dreams, but maybe you and Jordy could do that, if that's okay with Gary, is just do about a 30-minute presentation on anything you want. It'd be just like from 11 to 11:30, and I would love to hear it. So that Nick, you just sound like a treasure.
Right. Thank you. Very kind.
Yeah, go ahead, Jordy. Why don't you give us the last word, and then we'll have to head out. But hi, Angela and Carl. I just saw you come in. Go ahead.
Nick, I'll try to contact you offline. Craig, note taken. I volunteer not to be the first here.
Okay.
And
okay,
first,
that's fine.
I take as a compromise to put your notes on breathing in Spanish.
Yes. Okay. I certainly will. Okay.
I'll do as much as I can to help here. Okay.
I will. Definitely. Carl, did you have anything to say? And then we better go. Go ahead.
Oh, no. Just the precision that Nick was just talking about in regards to the Zen approach. I think that's very important. I mean, I recently had some dreams I didn't think much about, and have turned out to be like maybe announcement dreams or something. And somebody I'm close to is having dreams associated with this as well. I think that's very important. And moved down to Colombia for a few months. So I'm in Bogota right now.
Oh, great.
And, learning
Okay,
Spanish.
well,
yeah, it's beautiful down here. It's like 70 something degrees outside.
oh, beautiful.
But yeah, just focusing on that, and alchemy, listening to some alchemy stuff from, what's it not? Hillman, James Hillman.
James Hillman.
Interesting. I've been reading, Angela and I are reading Inner Work slowly together. And I'm reading James A. Hall, which I think is a funny name. I probably mentioned that before. James A. Hall. I feel like the dream works a hallway to different worlds. And he had a stroke sometime, and I thought it was interesting. He never shared his dreams in a dream group that he had. Do you know anything about him or why he did this?
I don't know much about him. I was getting mixed up with James Hollis,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know much about him. But
It seems to be a good book. It's easy to follow, to understand. And
okay. Well, great. Well, thank you, everybody. And thank you so much, Nick. I mean, you, I think, can teach us a lot if you would be willing to share sometime. I think we could all learn a lot too. And thank you so much, Gary. And Jordy, I will get my notes out. They're kind of a little scrambled, but I'll send you what I got. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And we'll start up with the heart chakra next time. Okay. Bye now.
Here, bye.